You might have painted a room before, or you might be a first-time decorator. But either way, we're going to show you some top tips for painting your home. It'll help you save time and money and get you loving your space. As you can see, we've already prepped our room for decorating. If you haven't already, you should check out our How to Prep a Room video so that you'll be nice and ready when it comes to painting your room. Here's what you'll need to get started. Masking tape, painter's tape, paint brushes, roller and tray, a flathead screwdriver or painting tool, small tubs or buckets, a ladder, a stirring stick, and some wet rags. You're probably wondering why we haven't included paint, but we'll get to that later. If you followed our How to Prep a Room video, then you should have nice, smooth, clean walls, dust sheets down, and your fixtures covered. Before we can paint though, there's a specific prep stage for painting that we'll need to go through first. You'll need to mask all of the corners and edges in your room with masking tape so that they don't get covered in paint. This means all skirting boards, window frames, ceilings, and any light switches or sockets that you haven't removed. It's nice and simple, you just need to make sure the tape is flush to the edges. Now we're ready to talk about paint, the most important bit. There are 3 things to consider when choosing your paint: the colour, the type of paint, and how much paint you'll need. When choosing the colour, it's best to get hold of some samples. These might be tester pots or swatches that you can stick to the wall in your home. It's a good idea to try a sample on your wall before buying, as the light in your home can have a big impact, or sometimes the paint can just look different out of the pot. Once you've chosen your colour, you'll need to figure out what type of paint you'll need. A matte finish is a good idea for walls as it is durable and covers marks easier. For any wooden features like skirting boards, it's best to use a gloss finish. At the end of the day, it's all down to personal preference. But something to watch out for is if the type of paint you choose will need a primer or an undercoat to be applied to surfaces before you can start painting. If so, you'll need to buy a primer as well. A primer or undercoat can help prepare the surfaces better for your actual paint job. Even if the paint you've chosen doesn't require a primer, you might want to use a stain block if your walls are very dirty or stained, or if you're making a dramatic colour change. To work out how much paint you'll need, you're going to need to do some measuring. To make life easier, we recommend looking online or in your local DIY shop for a wall painting calculator. Most painting brands recommend a litre of paint for every 10 metres squared. Don't forget to scale up if you want to do multiple coats and give yourself a little bit extra to allow for wastage. Okay, your room is fully prepped and you now have your paint. So let's get properly started. If you're applying an undercoat, you can follow all of these next steps for the undercoat and then repeat for the main paint job. Using a flathead screwdriver or a painter's tool, gently and evenly prise the lid off the paint tin. Make sure that you work all the way around the lid before properly opening. Take a stirring stick and stir the paint thoroughly. You want to make sure the stirring stick goes right to the bottom of the tin. We're going to start with a technique called cutting in. This is where you go around the edges of the walls with a paintbrush, so all your edges are neat before using a roller to cover the main part of the walls. Because we're going to be moving around the room a lot, you might want to pour some paint into a smaller pot to make it easier to carry. A good place to start is in the corners. To load your brush with paint, you want to dip about 1 inch into the paint. Don't dunk the whole brush. Drag both sides of the brush along the edge of your pot to move any excess, as you don't want any drips. You'll want to hold your paintbrush where the head meets the handle, a bit like you're holding a pencil. Start applying the paint to the corner and moving out. We're looking for an even coverage that moves about 3 inches in both directions. When your paint coverage starts to become uneven and spotty, it's time to reload your brush. If you find that you apply too much paint, don't worry, just spread it out for a more even coating. Once all your corners are done, we're going to do the same again along the skirting boards and any other edges like windows or plug sockets. With all your cutting in complete, it's time to move on to the main part of the walls. To do this next step, we're going to use a paint roller. Carefully pour your paint into a tray. To load your roller, dip it into the paint but don't fully submerge. Instead, roll it over the tray a few times to load the paint evenly. When it comes to rolling the paint onto the wall, there's no set technique. You can find out what works for you. We're looking for an even coverage across the wall, and the most common way is to apply the paint up and down, moving along the wall. Just like with our paintbrush earlier, once the coverage starts to go spotty, you need to reload your roller. Keep an eye out for any areas that are uneven or spotty. It's quicker to fix these whilst the paint is wet, and you can usually fix most little errors by moving a lightly loaded roller over these areas again. In no time at all, you should have all your walls covered. Most rooms require 2 coats of paint, so check your paint can for drying times. Leave everything to dry and then repeat the process for your second coat. When your second coat is dry, you can carefully remove your masking tape from the skirting boards, windows and other edges. If you're also painting your skirting boards and window frames, then you can repeat the same steps above, this time covering your floor and walls with tape to protect them from paint splashes. Your skirting boards should be nice and clean from when we prep the room, but just double check they haven't picked up any extra dust or dirt before painting. If you're putting tape on your newly painted walls, make sure to use painter's tape. You don't want to ruin all of your hard work. Once all your fixtures and edges are painted, there's nothing left to do but step back and admire your work.